Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on Dead Apple. I have been anticipating this movie for quite some time. Ever since y'all first said there was a Bungo Stray Dogs movie, I was like, okay, cool. And you're like, you have to watch it between seasons 2 and 3. I was like, okay, cool. And as we've gotten closer to the end of season 2, I was like, oh my gosh, we have an OVA, we have a movie, I'm so excited. And here we are. So just to give you a little tidbit behind the scenes, if you've been following me on Twitter, which you can get to my Twitter page from my main channel there's a little link you can get to my Twitter. I have been chronicling my journey through the Bungo Stray Dogs manga. I'm still only 3 volumes in. I put a little hiatus on reading the manga because I wanted to read 2 of the light novels before going into season 3. And one, which I talked about last week in the OVA, was Dazai's entrance exam, which I talked about. But the other light novel that I wanted to finish before starting season 3 was The Dark Era. I wanted to read the Dark Age arc before I started season 3 because the Dark Age kind of started us out with season 2. It gave us so much insight into Dazai. It gave us insight into characters like Engo. It introduced Oda, who is one of my favorite characters in the series, R.I.P. I wanted to read that novel because so many of you had talked about it. And if you go to my Twitter page, I did some excerpts from the novel and talked about them, but it's really, really good. And what I really like about it is the anime did a wonderful adaptation of the Dark Era. It's a really great adaptation. There's not too much that's different. What I like about the novel, though, is it's from Oda's perspective, just like it is in the episodes. So we get to see the understanding of the characters from Oda's perspective, especially Dazai. I think that's probably the most interesting, is how he views Dazai. And at the very end, as Oda's dying, he talks to, or even before he's dying, he talks to Jeed about how he needs to, talk to his friend, and how his friend isn't exactly like Geed. He wants to die, but in a different way. And he talks about Dazai's loneliness and about how him and Engo could relate to that loneliness, and how he saw just a child surrounded in darkness that didn't know what to do, but was too brilliant for his own good. And I was like, because you forget that, currently Dazai's only 22. He's super young, but he has all of this intelligence to him that I like Oda's description of him as being a child that's too brilliant for his own good, like someone born to be a mafiosa. And it's like, it's such a good novel. If you haven't read the Dark Age light novel for Bungo Stray Dogs, I really recommend it. It's very dialogue driven, but it goes through Oda's perspective into the characters. It goes into, and what they don't get in Oda's perspective, because just like in the anime, there are scenes where Oda's not present. Then it goes back, the discussion between Mori and Dazai, when Dazai figures out Mori's trade, that he traded off Oda's life to get the business permit. That was so well done. It was like, I will say that, and this is a spoiler for the light novel, but if you watch the anime, then y'all know it's coming anyway. But the light novel doesn't have Oda grabbing the bandages at the end. It doesn't have the bandages coming undone. And I thought the anime, having that be an artistic choice for the anime to do, like symbolically showing that Dazai is like freeing himself, like seeing the big picture completely instead of being blinded by the darkness of the Port Mafia, whatever the symbolism is. And we've argued it in the comments section, but I really think it's well done. I really like it. So highly recommend the Dark Age novel. Very good. And Dazai's entrance exam, really good novel. I like that both of those go from Kunikita and Oda's perspective. I've talked about this in the reactions, but Kunikita and Oda are very similar characters with similar personalities. But what I like about the novels is that their voices are distinct and different. I appreciate that a lot because, an author could just have had, they're similar characters, so they'll be similar narrators for the story. They're really not. Kunikita is different from Oda, and you can tell it reading the novels that the voices they have as narrators is distinct, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, if you've not read those 2 light novels, definitely go do it. I am going to continue reading the manga now. Now that I've read those 2 light novels, I'm going to take a break from the light novels. It's weird. I can be a fast reader at times, but when I'm trying to soak in something, I can be a slow reader. So I'm probably going to take a break from the light novels for now, but I do want to keep reading the manga and kind of catch up to where we're at in the series. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get to see, I'll post some like screen caps from it and my thoughts on it as we go. But I'm excited that not only we're to a movie, but that it's a movie. I've watched some anime movies that are only like an hour long, and so it's technically a film. It's technically 2 episodes in one, but this is, like 4 or 5 episodes in one. So that's gonna be like half a season. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have a full feature-length movie for Bungo Stray Dogs. And I'm guessing, if I were to guess, that this is an arc. Kind of like what Mugen Train does for Demon Slayer. I'm guessing this is a mini arc of the manga that they didn't want to put in season 3, but they wanted to just... It was too long to just be a standalone episode, but it wasn't long enough to be like a central point of the season, so they've just decided to make it its own movie. I'm all for that. If you have an arc in a manga that you can't quite make into... Like Jujutsu Kaisen's doing that with Volume 0. Mugen Train, Demon Slayer just did it, so I'm all for it. It makes sense, right? Given just did it with the whole Akihiko story, so I get it. I'm all on board. But y'all, I've rambled enough. I'm so ready for this. I have no clue what to expect because season 2 ended pretty definitively. Like, we set up Fyodor and we set up the House of the Dead Rats, the Russian organization of gifted users, and Hawthorne's with him. We set that up, and we set up lots of little things like the discrepancy, the disruption between the guild. We set up little tiny plot points that I'm assuming season 3 will touch on, but it really just kind of ended. Like, it was a perfect season finale, so there weren't any loose threads. So starting this movie, it's going to be like going at it completely new, which is exciting. So, yeah. So buckle in, y'all. We are here for at least an hour and a half of the film, and then talking about it afterwards, which is pretty exciting. So, with that being said, let's do this, shall we? We are going to start episode. We're going to start the Dead Apple movie here in 3. And I don't know what Dead Apple means. It sounds like Snow White, but we shall see. In 3, 2, 1, let's go. Oh my gosh. There was a lot that happened. There was a lot that happened in that movie. That was, There's some interesting things being set up. There's a lot of revelations. I'm glad that y'all had me watch this movie, because I think there's some things that this movie revealed that if I hadn't have watched it, I would have been, I needed to watch this movie. I would have been left a little bit in the dark with some of the information, especially about Fyodor, especially about Atsushi's ability. We'll talk about that. And then some connections with Oda and the others. So I'm so glad that I read the novel before watching this movie. Good timing, because in the novel they talk about the dragon head. I like that there's a lot of dragon symbolism in this movie, and there's a lot of dragon and tiger symbolism, and we'll talk about this because some of you have commented about it in season 2, so I want to bring it up. But I like that we get the dragon head incident, because the book talks about that, or the dragon head rush. I think it was called Dragon Rush or Dragon Head Rush in the light novel. But it was basically the incident that happened 6 years ago, now that we know. So it was 2 years prior to the Dark Age arc. So Dazai and Chuuya would have been 16, which makes a lot of sense in that Chuuya is like on a rampage on this pink motorcycle. Of course he's on a pink motorcycle. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? But I love we get to see Oda again. I miss Oda so much. But it makes sense. He finds Sakura. This is where he finds the orphans. This is where he gets the sense of duty. It's so weird seeing Oda and Chuuya in the same place at the same time. It's something that I didn't ever expect to see in this series. Because in the Dark Age arc, we don't ever see Chuuya. We assume that Chuuya is on a mission somewhere else, and so he's not present during all the stuff that goes down with Oda and Mimic. But I never thought we would see Oda and Chuuya on the same stage, even if briefly, and it just shows you like the big dynamic between the two of them, the total contrast, like Oda taking in the kids, rescuing them, doing everything so subtly, and then Chuuya flies by on a pink motorcycle with like bombs going off around him. Like, if that's not a representation of the differences between those two, I don't know what is. And Dazai loves both of them, so for different reasons. But man, they really pay such a good homage to the Dark Age arc. And the moment that Atsushi went into the cemetery, I was like, in the Dark Age novel, they established that at the very end of the book, Dazai goes to Oda's grave with white flowers, with white roses. And I love that we get that kind of confirmation here, that little callback to it. I love that even back 6 years ago, when they're 16 years old, these two are just like telling each other to shut up, and it's like they just chide each other, but at the same time you're like, they love each other, you know it. they're just like giving each other a hard time. Like, come on, they care about each other enough to rescue each other. Okay. But the animation in this, especially these animators, Studio Bones, they love them some Dazai. They love animating him and making him look amazing because he looked gorgeous this whole movie. It's like, okay. But the shot of him at the grave and sitting up next to Oda's grave, and I like that Atsushi says, oh, was it someone you were in love with? And Dazai's like, well, if it was a woman, I'd ask her to have committed suicide with me. Like tossing it away as a joke. But he said he was a friend who helped me to leave the Port Mafia. So whether you consider Oda and Dazai romantic or not, the fact of the matter is that Oda was clearly one of Dazai's closest friends. Enough of a friend that he goes to the damn Lupin bar with the glass of whiskey and the little hydrangea there in memoriam. That whole scene was gorgeous. But so getting introduced to Tatsuhiko, which he's such a weird antagonist. Fyodor, I get Fyodor. I get Fyodor's whole chaos and agenda and wanting to dismantle everything. And we'll get to the book, but wanting to dismantle everything. I get it. I get that with Fyodor. His motivations, I get. The whole antagonist in this, and I guess this is kind of, it's canon, but it's a very standalone movie, and Tatsuhiko is a very standalone antagonist, right? He's that one antagonist that's just there for the movie. He's just there to be the center of conflict, and then he's going to get defeated in the end, and we're going to move on. Whereas Fyodor, you can tell, yeah, he's going to bleed over into season 3 to be our main bad guy, and so that makes total sense. But Tatsuhiko is so very strange, because he says, it'll be mine. It won't be mine. He's talking about all the gems. I love the mosaic and how beautiful it looks. So he wants Atsushi's ability. That's the whole crux of this. And Atsushi's ability is the special one. You are the chosen one, Atsushi, as per shonen protagonists, as that goes with that song and dance. But I love how ghostly that Tatsuhiko looks even in the flashback here from 6 years ago. He looks so ghostly. Which I guess if he died, he said starting an organization hasn't helped me get what I want. If he had died even back then, because he had his power back then, if he had died 6 years ago and Atsushi's what, 18? So he would have been 12 when he killed him? Trying to establish the timeline here. But he's such an odd antagonist. I don't know. Again, we have Lovecraft in this world, who is an otherworldly being, defying all laws of physics and everything related to humanity. So if we can have Lovecraft in this world, it's not that far-fetched to think that we can have a person who has an ability to manifest a special ability after they die. And he's basically a ghost. He's basically just like a walking ghost, which Elise exists in this world. So again, the rules are bent a little bit. I'm so glad we got confirmation about Elise. That just made my day. I was like, this creepy, a fiend, as the president calls her, an absolute fiend. I'm like, of course. But I think what's the most interesting about Fyodor and Dazai and Tatsuhiko in this case is that, like Engo establishes, they're all three extremely lonely people who are just consumed by despair and loneliness. And they really make Fyodor, like his hair on top of the rooftop when it's just billowing under that big snowy hat, like he looks very, very handsome. He's very pretty. Fyodor is. It's just a shame that he's awful. But he's very pretty. He looks a lot like Mori. He has that just kind of same charm to him. It's very interesting. The OP in this was amazing. Like they went hard on this OP to, if you didn't know these characters, we're going to give you all the explanation about them and everything you need to know. And there was a couple that I wanted to go through that I didn't get to read their little cue cards because it was going so fast. But of course we pair our two double black pairings together. So get to the ones there. So of course, Dazai, I wanted to read his. Dazai is no longer human. I want to read their abilities. So, yeah, the animation, him tapping the glass that represents Oda and his friendship. The whole Bar Lupin. If I ever go to Japan, I'm going to Bar Lupin. it's already said and done. It's gonna happen because I need to go there, just even if it's just to sit. All right. And then Akutagawa. Previously fought almost to the death. Yeah, with Atsushi. Of course you did. So, and then the neon sign, the Bungo Stray Dogs sign, I need one of those too. So, yeah, the whole thing with Oda's grave, we get that whole flashback to establish. And at the very end, when Atsushi's like, Dazai is a good person, I like it because Dazai, you know, he can tell he's looking at Atsushi like, I'm glad you have faith and believe in me. But I'm like, Atsushi's still very naive, and I like Atsushi's optimism and that he sees the best in people. I think that's one of Atsushi's better traits, is that he always looks for the good in people. Akutagawa gives him a lot of trouble because Akutagawa is such a bitch. But I love Akutagawa. I have to admit, I have slowly, through Stockholm Syndrome with the show, developed a liking of Akutagawa, and I will explain it later. But Atsushi trying to find just the good in people, and that he can't believe that Dazai would really betray them. And Dazai is such a great character because, yeah, in the end, his actions, you could argue, were to benefit everyone by trying to sneak in and double-cross Tatsuhiko, and then he ends up getting double-crossed himself. But Dazai isn't a good person he's not a totally good... Your definition of good is interesting, Atsushi, because Dazai's like, I've been murdering people my whole life, nearly. So... am I a good person? And so it just ties back to that argument of what makes us good. And it ties back to Oda making him promise, like, become a good person, save people. And I just really like that Atsushi tries to find the good in him. This whole movie, I forgot that Rampo doesn't have an ability. He doesn't have an ability. It's all in his head. So at the first I was like, man, his ability... how would ultra deduction really kill someone? Because it's not really something that is a weapon in any way. And then it didn't dawn on me till the very end when he like opened up the safe and was like, oh, my food's safe and secure for me to eat again. I was like, oh yeah, he doesn't have ability. The one question I have in this whole film that I didn't quite understand is where the regular people went. Did they just vanish? Did they just evaporate? Did they just disintegrate? Because they didn't have abilities, so where'd they go? Because it shows like Walking Dead style, they're all disappeared. So that was the one aspect about the show I didn't understand where the actual people went. At first I thought it was going to be like a pocket dimension like what Lucy makes, but it wasn't. So that's probably the only question I really have in this movie is where did the people go? And the movie doesn't really explain that or offer any answer. It's just they're all back at the end of the movie after Tatsuhiko dies. So... I mean, it's a minor plot thing. It doesn't really affect the movie. But that was one question I had throughout the whole thing was, well, where is everybody? And then apparently this woman that is at the end, she has an ability because she's not disappearing. So, interesting. I like that we get introduced to her because I have a feeling, why would you bring in this random character working with Ango unless she has some pertinence to the plot? So, I'm assuming she's going to show up in season 3. She looks kind of like Higuchi, but she's very, very pretty. And apparently she's with the Special Ops. She's their version of her. But the Bar Lupin scene with the whiskey glass and the little hydrangea. It's so gorgeous. It reminds me... the animation in this scene reminds me of Kyoani because I'm watching Violet Evergarden at the same time. And the whiskey glasses, the way they animate it, it reminds me a lot of Kyoani's animation, which is interesting to me. Should we wait for Ango to arrive? Ango is such an interesting character. And I feel so bad for him. A lot of you have been like, I feel bad for Ango. And up until this movie, I was like, yeah, Ango's a cool character. But this movie, I'm like, he really has it rough. Because he is the dog of the Special Ops. He is the intel gatherer. He's the guy organizing everything. He's putting in all the work. But in doing so, he has to sacrifice a lot. Like, he sacrificed his friendship with Dazai and Oda. He sacrificed his situation with the Port Mafia. I mean, he sacrificed his freedom to kind of move around because he works for the Special Ops. So Ango kind of has put himself into a corner in a lot of ways, but he kind of becomes the brunt of all the blame for multiple parties. Like, he has to deal with the Clock Tower organization. Dazai blames him in part for Oda's death. Chuuya blames him in part before the incident that happened that killed 6 of his friends that we just get glimpses of in this movie. So Ango gets blamed for a lot, and a lot of it is indirectly related to Ango. He's like, yeah, I may have helped carry it out, but I was just doing my job. And it's like, But I love that make it be known that Oda does not know fairy tales. He thinks that it's Cinderella, but it's Snow White. But Dazai knows his fairy tales. I like that quality. I'm a big sucker for a fairy tale, so I like the quality about this, that it was kind of just a twisted fairy tale in only the way that Bungo Stray Dogs could do it. And I'm sorry, but Chuuya showing up and it being Snow White and being like Snow White's kiss, like, okay, show. I get it now. A lot of you were saying, you're like, oh, just wait for the movie. If you think that there's Chuuya and Dazai shipping now, wait till the movie in season 3. And I was like, okay, well, we've got to the movie. I see you. I see your shipping. I'm with you on it. 100%. But in the whole thing with the poison apple, I'm watching the scene in the bar, Dazai talking about the despair. Like, maybe because in the fairy tale, she gets given the poison apple and she eats it, committing suicide. And so Dazai's like, well, maybe it wasn't unbeknowing to her. Maybe she had all this despair at the idea that her mother was poisoning her and she chose to eat the poison apple. Maybe that's it. And so that kind of relates to Dazai's whole situation of joining up with Tatsuhiko and Fyodor. Is Dazai lives in this world of despair. He's like, I'm sitting here alone in this bar. My best friend is dead in part of actions with an association I was a part of. So I have a shared responsibility for his death. And he just like, I can't escape this darkness that surrounds me. I find it interesting, though, that when he joins Tatsuhiko and Fyodor, he doesn't have the bandages on him. He doesn't have the bandage or anything. He's all clean. His hair is different. Like, Dazai just looks different in that scene, which is interesting. So the antidote, the pill, I was like, how's he getting out of this? But it's the pill that he takes. I don't exactly know an antidote for what, because he gets stabbed in the back. So I don't know if it was just to heal him or for him to get his ability back. It's a movie. I'm going to let it pass. But it's plot contrivance, going to let it pass. But I was like, why? I like the idea in this movie that you can't quite trust Dazai, because that's just his character. You can't trust him. He, in 1 minute, can be helping you. In the next minute, it's wherever his interests lie. That's why he's so scary, because wherever his interest lies, what he's going to side with. So if it's not on your side, then you're in trouble. But the concept of the dead apple, and then him being part of working with Tatsuhiko to try to get in on the inside, is so interesting. And I love when Dazai's eyes get that murderous look. So I find it really cute that, just going through this movie, like little notes, I find it cute that Atsushi gives Kyoka the bedroom and he sleeps in the broom closet. It's like, oh, he wants to give her a room. And so the whole door that Atsushi kept seeing was the memories that he had of killing that guy. Of killing him. Which, to be fair, he was being tortured. So, and it didn't seem like it was totally him that killed him, but maybe that's something we're going to touch on. I find it curious that apparently Akutagawa and Kyoka are maybe onto it or knew about those memories. I'm curious to know how. I guess Mori might have told them. I'm not sure exactly, or if that's what they were referring to. But Kyoka had her moments in this. To be fair, let it be known, if there's a zombie apocalypse, I want Kyoka on my team. Girl can drive. Girl has memorized maps of the city. Girl has a bitchin' ability that can save you and fight the enemy. She's smart and resourceful. Kyoka is on my zombie survival team for sure. Atsushi is not. Until the end of this movie. At the first I was like, Atsushi buddy, you are our sweet summer child. But Kyoka's definitely on the survival team. She could handle it. I really liked her in this movie. And then her mother is so beautiful. I love that Kyoka and her mother have the same eyes, even though their hair are different colors and different styles. I love that. And I love that Kyoka has the realization. She kind of has the same realization that Atsushi does, in that their abilities are part of them. And it's part of their being. And so you can't, even if you say you don't want to have that ability, it's part of you. So if you don't have it, you're not complete, right? And so Kyoka admitting that she wants to use Demon Snow, she wants to control it, but having to fight with that desire because she knows what damage that ability has caused is the big conflict for her. And I like that she kind of gets over that. And then our boy Akutagawa, you know, he claims that he doesn't care about anybody, but he cared about Kyoka in this. I don't know if he cared about Atsushi, but I just love them together. People were commenting, and I forget the commenter's name, but we're talking about the duality of Atsushi and Akutagawa, and it really comes out in this movie, especially through Tatsuhiko, because Tatsuhiko's big symbolic representation is of a dragon, which is interesting, and he talks towards the end of this about a dragon and tiger being yin and yang, being antithesis of each other, right? And so dragons symbolizing chaos and tigers symbolizing kind of power and order, and them totally being the yin and yang of each other. And a lot of you were talking about how that's kind of the case with Atsushi and Akutagawa, in that Atsushi, the tiger is representing like masculinity and power and dominance, and then the dragon represents more femininity and chaos and cleverness. And that's kind of Atsushi and Akutagawa in a way, because even though Akutagawa tries to act macho and tries to act... Dude had a Sailor Moon transformation again in this. Dude, you can act masculine all you want, but Akutagawa does have some kind of like feminine quality to him. Like he's very slender. He has like just... I don't know. There's just something about him that I get it. I'm like, yeah, you are... If the yin and yang, you're the more feminine of the two. Which is funny. But a lot of you said that the contrasting elements between Akutagawa and Atsushi are kind of the yin and yang, the dragon and the tiger. And I think that kind of gets illustrated in this movie a lot too, which I find fascinating. I love it. So, yeah, so we established that there's this underground communication with the agency, that they have a special communication with the special ops, and I wonder if that's going to come up again in season 3. And of course, Kunikita has access to it because he's basically like the next president. I did not expect this fairy tale world to have Dazai dressed out in white with the black undershirt. It's the opposite of his regular garb, right? Instead of like the black outside or the darker outside and the bolo, it's just the tie and it's the white shirt and everything. And Dazai's hair is all styled differently. I don't care for that look on him. I like his traditional look. But what I love is the symbolism of the fruits and the skull. The skull with the 2 knives stuck down in it. So you knew from the symbolism in that moment, you knew that 2 people are getting betrayed and getting stabbed with the knife. It's such a cool foreshadowing. And I like that in the end, like Dazai, I wondered if it was going to be Dazai or if it was Dazai that was going to stab Fyodor and Tatsuhiko in the back, but then it ends up being Dazai and Tatsuhiko that get stabbed in the back by Fyodor. And Fyodor is an interesting antagonist. I think he's going to be interesting in season 3 because he's just he's like Mori and Dazai in that you can't really read him. He comes out and says what it's weird. He comes out and says what his motivations are, but there's still an unreadable quality about him, which I find fascinating. That you don't get the full picture. It's very much like Dazai. You only get a certain picture of everything. You don't get the full scope, right? And oh my gosh. I love the idea of Atsushi and Akutagawa and Kyoka having to work together and them defeating their abilities to gain them back. And they all went through very clever ways. I was like, how are they going to do this? And each of them were clever in their own right. So I really liked that. Gosh, the panorama and the animation for the mosaic room where all the abilities were gathered. So they talk about singularity and everything and gathering all the abilities and stuff. And that part got a little bit convoluted and confusing, but it's anime movie logic. It's fine. And so I was really like, Dazai being dead, which the whole antidote thing, whatever. It gave us a wonderful moment with Chuuya and Dazai. I'm not going to complain about it. As soon as he became the dragon, I was like, who could possibly stop this seemingly immortal dragon? Oh, well, it'd be Chuuya, of course. And I like that it's Mori that sent him there, because Mori is like Dazai. He's big brain. He's doing all the chess moves, everything. I'm sorry, but we need to talk about my new ship that has come out of this series, and I didn't think that I would ever have that happen, and that's the president and Mori. I was like, wait, what? Okay, confirmation that Elise is his power is amazing, and she had a giant syringe, so I'm like, is she just like his bloodlust? Is she like just able to kill people instantly? And because he's talked about mowing through people before with his ability. I don't know, but I love that him and the president have the same problem. They can't destroy each other. Mori doesn't want to destroy his power because it's Elise-chan, and the president can't destroy his power because they're on equal footing, because of course all men are created equal. So their solution is, we'll just kill each other's powers, and that'll solve the problem. I love it. And just their relation with one another and everything. It's just so good. And I still love that the president's like, she's a fiend, like little Elise-chan. But I'm so glad to get confirmation that it's his power. That raises some questions of how in the world she's able to physically manifest and be there, but it is bisexuality, so maybe that's a fragment of the power, is that she can manifest into a physical form. So would he use her then to kill people? I mean, he killed the mafia president, but that was just cutting his throat. Like, that wasn't even using his ability. He didn't have to. So does he just like sick Elise-chan on anybody that gets in his way, and he's like, here, go take care of him, and she kills him? That would kind of make sense with his power, because his power is all about strategy, and if he could have a literal physical chess piece that he could move around on its own, it'd be kind of like the queen in the game of chess. The queen can move everywhere. The queen can move anywhere she wants to, right? So if he's the king on the chessboard and Elise is the queen, she can move around the chessboard wherever he wants her to and do whatever he wants her to. So that might be it. That would be very interesting. All right. And then this conversation about friends, that's kind of cruel that Dazai tells Tatsuhiko, like, don't you have any friends? Because Dazai really only had Oda, and then I guess Chuuya you can maybe count as a friend. And then by the end of it, obviously, Atsushi's like, we're friends. Dazai's like, oh, you sweet summer child. So, yeah. I find it very interesting, the conversation between Ango and Chuuya figuring out that it's very reminiscent of the end of the Dark Age arc, when we find out the Port Mafia had done all that scheming to get Mimic to arrive and to set everything up. The funny thing is, the Special Ops did the exact same thing. The Special Ops brought in Tatsuhiko the same damn way for reasons. But it's just, I like that Chuuya establishes, he's like, oh, y'all are so self-righteous, talking about you have to protect everybody with an ability, even someone like Tatsuhiko that could literally kill us all. Because he has an ability, you have to protect him. He's like, y'all are self-righteous. And it's just pointing out how even the Special Ops are exactly the same. They're exactly the same as the Port Mafia, just in different clothes, right? I really like that conversation between Ango and Chuuya, and then Chuuya being like, well, you'll pay for this favor with your life, and Ango seems ready to accept it, and then of course Chuuya, y'all have said that Chuuya's way more compassionate than he lets on, and I get that this movie too, because he could have killed Ango, but he doesn't, because that's not how Chuuya rolls. It's like, aw. I did find it a little confusing that Akutagawa and Kyoka seem to understand why his ability isn't coming back to him. So I'm like, do they know about his memories? How did Mori inform them about them when they were going? I guess Mori might have, because they were charged to capture him, so they would probably know about his past. Interesting. So yeah, the whole conversation, and then Fyodor, them stabbing Dazai in the back, and Dazai just embracing death and saying how good it feels. It's so sad, because in that moment he looks so beautiful and peaceful. And I found it curious, because the whole time, with suicide being a theme in this film, it was like, of course it would bring it back to Dazai. And it's ironic, because the person that killed him is someone that was already dead. And, But no. Chuuya's gonna save you. So Fyodor saying that his whole ability didn't really come after him because his power is crime and punishment, and so they're friends. Why would they harm one another? Which makes me think, like, if his power has dual purpose, if it's crime and punishment, if there's two different abilities that he has that work in tandem, that could be interesting to see. The part where Atsushi was like, that moment I used my claws and just repeated it over and over again was pretty freaky, I'm not gonna lie. Pretty freaky. And then the animation about him. Not gonna lie, though. Not gonna lie. I'm not a fan of mutton chops Atsushi. I'm okay with full tiger Atsushi. I'm okay with partial tiger Atsushi. But the upgraded partial tiger Atsushi, where he has giant mutton chops, that moment when Kyoka turned around and looked at him, she was like, ugh. I'm not a big fan of that, just because I think it makes him look goofy. But I'm glad that we get the realization that he somehow, I'm glad that Atsushi acknowledges that his power is connected to him, and he calls out to the tiger and he's like, come here, and all that. So that's the whole idea of this being transcending, of Tatsuhiko transcending death, is very, very curious. And we get the little cameo from the clock towers of Agatha Christie, and her basically being like, we'll just incinerate the place and just solve the problem. Okay, cool, bye. Like, she's clearly a woman of action, so I'm very curious about her. But Fyodor is interesting. And I like that they established by the end of this that Fyodor's motivations, no one really understands. So, that's cool. I love the Chuuya fight. The Chuuya fight, honestly, in all honesty, I know we had to end the movie with Atsushi versus the Atsushi fight with Akutagawa, Kyoka, and the revived 2.0 Tatsuhiko. It was fine. It was very shonen, or I know some of you said this is seinen, so it was very actiony and everything. I liked Chuuya's battle better. And I kind of would have preferred if that had just been the end of him. It would have made more sense, right? I think it would have made more sense if Chuuya rescuing Dazai, the Snow White metaphor and everything. That would have been really cool. And then maybe in Atsushi's case, they could have just came and Kyoka and Akutagawa could have came to him in that memory of him killing Tatsuhiko and kind of talked him through his abilities and everything. I don't know. It was fine. It was perfectly fine the way it was, but I kind of preferred Chuuya's battle a little bit more because it made sense. You have this literal godlike being, and then you have Chuuya who has literal godlike powers. It makes sense, the matchup. At the end when he's coming back and he faces Atsushi, I'm like, Atsushi's not quite as OP as Chuuya, right? But him, I like that the antidote that Dazai's been keeping in his gums this whole time. I love it. And I love that it takes Chuuya punching him, and he's like, I counted on you. I trusted that you'd come and punch me in the face. And then Chuuya's like, you trusted me. I'm looking at him, like, touching his face gently. He's like, you used corruption believing in me. And he's like, you trusted that I'd come find you and punch you. So it's like, for all their antagonism towards one another, they absolutely care for one another, and I'm getting on board the ship, y'all. Boop, boop. I'm on board. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with the Silver Wolf and the Scary Doctor. I'm totally about it. It's great. Just awesome. But yeah, this movie, it was good. I am definitely glad that I watched it before season 3 because I feel like with the new character, what's her face, being introduced, that works with the Ango. I'm gonna get her name real quick. Yeah, so none of the civilians were harmed. And they're doing an all-nighter. Yeah, Sujimura. I definitely like her character already, even though we just saw a little brief moment of her and Ango. Ango needs a friend, so I'm glad she's there. But yeah, this movie was great. I loved it. The callback to the Dark Age arc, the animation of Dazai, Atsushi and Akutagawa slowly but surely knowing each other a little bit more. Kyoka, I loved Kyoka's arc in this. I thought that was really good. And then introducing Fyodor as a competent antagonist. that we don't quite understand, that I'm sure will in no way, shape, or form have any bearing on season 3. But this was really good. I am definitely curious to know what your thoughts were down below. It had the perfect full circle anime movie for a series arc that just came around and ended nice and neat. But the callbacks to seasons 2 and 1, and then just the things that we know are probably going to come back up in season 3, I like that they were kind of woven into this as well. So, with that being said, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below with the movies. Please don't spoil me with season 3. I'm really excited. But speaking of that, next week we will start season 3, episode 1. And I'm really excited. So, yeah, with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you all again real soon with more Bungo Stray Dogs. Bye.